Welcome to another episode of Leadership Tidbits with Coach T. Wilson. I am your host and leadership mentor, Tywauna Wilson. If this is your first time tuning in to Leadership Tidbits, thank you so much for tuning in. You are in for another amazing show with another amazing mentor. So come on in. Make sure you introduce yourself so that we can welcome you in properly. So come in, let us know where you're coming in from. And then I will bring our mentor on. But as you know, today is Tuesday. So we also released another episode of Elaborate Topics podcast where we had an amazing guest on that show. So be sure to check it out on directimpactbroadcasting.com or your favorite podcast platform. So without further ado, I am excited and happy to bring on our mentor tonight, Kendra.
Hey, how's it going?
It is going well. I am excited to have you here in the studio with us, sharing your tidbits with all of the viewers or listeners, whoever will be getting this podcast or the audio version, depending on when they get this. And so with all of my mentors, I like to tell our guests where they are coming in from, because I tell my guests that I bring them mentors from all around the world. And I know tonight is no different. So where are you coming in from?
I am from a tiny remote mountain town in British Columbia, Canada.
Woohoo! So we have Kendra here all the way from Canada, which is pretty cool. My last, I think, 2 or 3 mentors were from Canada, different parts.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so very exciting. I've had somebody even here from, where were they from? It was a whole totally different day where they were from. And I'm like, it's dark here. And it was like 3:00 in the afternoon there. So
I love that. So international.
I know. So we do have Miss Diane who's joining us. She's an entrepreneur. She's the owner of Christie Collections in Cincinnati, Ohio. So please check her out. She's doing some amazing things. She has some amazing products. My daughter is laying on her amazing product now, which is a bean bag that has all kind of awesome sayings on there. I am beautiful, and letters and numbers and all kind of stuff. And it's super comfy. So even we like it to lay on. So thank you, Miss Diane, for joining in. She's over on the LinkedIn platform. So let me introduce you all and read a little bit about our mentor today. So Kendra is a former multiple 6-figure functional health coach turned online business strategist for health and wellness coaches and practitioners. She is on a mission to stop health coaches from being broke AF and build booming 6-figure businesses that they love. She has helped hundreds of coaches grow their practices, attract consistent clients, and blow up their bank accounts. Now, I don't know about y'all, but who don't want their bank account blown up? She is the creator of the Health Coach Accelerator, which turns scared, scattered, and self-conscious coaches into confident, focused, and high-performing health entrepreneurs. She is also the founder of the Group Program Academy, which teaches coaches to scale their income and impact with online group coaching programs. Kendra has been featured in Ariana Huffington's Thrive Global, CEO Blog Nation, and Authority Magazine for her expertise on sales. When she isn't getting fired up about business and marketing, you will find her indulging in her love of adrenaline sports in the remote mountains of beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Ooh. Well, this is going to be exciting. So talk to us a little bit. I know I read your bio, but talk to us a little bit more about what exactly you do and how did you get into this space?
Yeah. So I kind of got into the space almost by accident. I got interested in alternative health in my early 20s when I got took birth control and got cystic acne after taking this pill. And no doctor could help me. They wanted me to be on more birth control, antibiotics, Accutane, and it just really didn't resonate with me. So I started getting really passionate about alternative health and diet and lifestyle and that sort of thing, and that went on for a few years. And then in my kind of later 20s, when I moved to the town that I live in now, and I moved here to ski. And my first season skiing here, I was actually approached by a guy at the bottom of the ski lift. And he said, "Hey, you're a really good skier. Do you want to be in photos and movies?" And I was like, yes, yes, I do. And I started envisioning this really glamorous lifestyle of, getting paid to ski, traveling the world. And I've skied my whole life and I was very passionate about it. So I thought that would be really amazing. But, that ultimately led to me pushing myself pretty hard with skiing. And at the end of that ski season, I jumped off a cliff, kind of balance was off, and I ended up tearing my ligament in my knee. And I ended up needing reconstructive surgery, which was pretty hard, pretty depressing. It kind of ended those dreams to be a professional skier. And then on top of that, I was working my career in forestry. So I would work in the summers so I could take the winter off to ski. And it's a very physical job, right? I'm tramping around the bush. I was fighting fires. I was planting trees. I was doing all kinds of things out in the bush. And the having a broken knee was a really big deal. And so I kind of spiraled into a bit of a depression because I couldn't ski, I couldn't work. I ended up on medical unemployment for a year and a half. And something about that really hard time really triggered this major health crisis that I ended up having for almost 8 years. And it started off with insomnia, it ended up with this really deep chronic fatigue. And so I was having all kinds of issues and I didn't know what to do with my life and didn't know what to do with my health. And so I was doing a lot of researching and I was listening to a podcast one day and the guy was talking about his certification program. He's like, anyone can get certified as a coach and, learn how to interpret these different lab tests. And at that point, I was eating perfectly. I had really great lifestyle. Like I was doing all the things, but I still felt like crap. So I was like, okay, I need testing. I need to run the tests, see what's going on. And I figured, well, maybe I should do the certification program because I could not only help myself, but maybe this would be a career for me as well. And so I took that program, and that was in 2014. And I decided to build this health coaching practice in the middle of this health crisis, which was kind of crazy. And so I built that business over about 5 years. And in 2019, I honestly got a little bit burnt out. Like I was really heavily focused on client health and I was really heavily focused on my health and had really improved my health, but something was still stuck. And so at that point, I was like, I just need to do something different. Like I'm just too overwhelmed with this. And so I had also realized that I really like the business. I like the tech. I like the marketing. I loved the actual building part of the business. So I transitioned over to helping health coaches build their business. And then I ended up hiring my own health coach and then getting diagnosed with Lyme disease. And essentially that's what had been going on all those 7 years was undiagnosed Lyme disease causing this really deep chronic fatigue. And so I started doing that in 2019, working with health coaches to build their business. And then through working with this functional health coach, managed to heal and get rid of the chronic Lyme disease.
Wow. Wow. Well, praise God that you are okay and were able to pivot. I know a lot of times people aren't able to pivot, especially when they've had, you were in forestry and you were into the adrenaline sports with the skiing, and that could have been life shattering for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to pivot in not just your career, but start a business and then go in to help others, I think that is pretty inspirational. And I know people that are watching this podcast or listening to it when they find it on the podcast aggregators will be just like you, how it was when they heard, how it was when you heard that person talking about a certification. Because especially after COVID, a lot of people are pivoting, especially
Yes.
now more than ever. So I think that's a very interesting journey. So talk to us a little bit about your successes as you have went through your business career, and what has it taught you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what it's really taught me is that success is not a linear journey and it's very similar to health, right? I always thought, oh, you start working on your health and you feel better and you feel better and you feel better. But really, it just looks like this. It's like all over the friggin' place. It's this huge scribble. It has all kinds of stuff going on and it's very complex. And I found success was very much that as well. As I'm sure you're aware, there's no such thing as overnight success for 99.999% of people. And I think really I learned that it's a journey and it's ongoing, right? It's not like you hit the peak of that mountain and you just stop and you're done. You're like, oh, I'm successful. I can put that badge on and say I'm a success. I think success is an ongoing journey and it truly comes down to how you define it because success looks differently for everyone. And what was really important for me was stepping outside like the conventional idea of success. And in business, it's very much like money based, right? Success is money. I've got the six-figure business. I hit 10K. Oh, now I'm at six figures. Now I'm at seven figures. And what I sort of learned from that is that while money goals are great and it definitely gives you an ego boost to hit them, they're
Mhm.
also very unfulfilling. It's like I wanted to hit the 5K month and then I hit the 5K month and I was like happy for an hour. And then I was like, okay, 8K. And then I hit the 8K month and then happy for an hour and then you're kind of over it. So I've really had to redefine what success looks like for me. And for me, it's more about the lifestyle, right? And that's the success for me is being able to lead the lifestyle that I lead and have the time to focus on friends, family, outdoor sports, nature, that sort of thing, and sort of building my business and the way that I make money around that versus like just going for those income goals.
I think that's very important too that you mentioned that, because whether it's in your business or in your career, success is going to look different and it's not always about money. So I'm in
Mhm.
my background is healthcare and I'm in laboratory medicine. And so like most healthcare careers at this point, it's facing an extreme amount of staff openings,
Mm,
burnout, low
yeah.
staffing. And so,
Yeah.
what most people tend to say is that, well, if we paid more, we would have more people in the industry. And it's really not about just money, right? I mean, the
Mhm.
money is a tool to what? Freedom, trinkets, experiences, whatever that is for you. So, I think that's
Mhm.
important that you mentioned identifying success for yourself, whether it's in your business or it's in your career. Now, I know that you were working and then kind of transitioned to entrepreneurship. And so some of our viewers and listeners could be thinking that same thing like, well, I'm working and I have a passion for helping others in the coaching space, whether it's uh, health coaching or physical coaching or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
What advice would you give them, or what steps should they kind of think about as if they prepare to make that transition? Because sometimes they hear a lot of different stuff. Like I said, we have career professionals on here, and they may be thinking like, "Look, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I think I just need to quit," because some experts are telling them they just need to jump all in. I don't know if that's the case or not, but what would you say that they need to think about as they maybe considering transitioning to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, I think entrepreneurship is the greatest gift that the universe has to offer, personally. I think it's amazing, and I think if people are into it, they should go for it. I mean, I don't think entrepreneurship is for everyone, and some people really like the, um, just to have that 9 to 5 job and that regular paycheck, and there's nothing wrong with that if you want that, but if you don't resonate or align with that lifestyle, which I never did my whole life. I remember in high school in career class, I was just like, none of this sounds fun to me. I hate this 9 to 5 thing. Like I hated it. And all my friends were like, I'm gonna be a teacher, I'm gonna be a lawyer. And I was like, I just don't want to do this. Like, and at the time, this is in like the early 2000s, entrepreneurship was never presented as an option. Like, it really didn't become on my radar until in my late 20s. But I would say, like, if you don't resonate with that lifestyle, absolutely pursue entrepreneurship. But I don't think it needs to be an all or nothing game. And I think that's actually where people can go wrong with it, because the truth is, building a business takes time. And it's not going to happen in 6 months. It really doesn't. Like, if you see someone online who says it happened in 6 months, good for them. That's great. They're an outlier. It takes time and it can take years. And there's nothing wrong with that if it takes that long. But you have to understand that. And I would prepare for it to take a few years. I would say the first 3 years are really tough. And so when it comes to money, you want to make sure you're taken care of, right? And so you might have a full-time job and you're thinking about entrepreneurship. Well, there can be a middle ground, and that might be like reducing your hours, getting a part-time job, something to kind of keep you afloat while you start building your business. And this is what I did. I actually started working for the certification program that I got certified with for, I think, 3 years, doing about 20 hours a week. And that was great, because the problem is, if you don't have the money and you're really stressed out about paying your bills, which can happen when you go full time in your business, you end up in this like desperation vibe energy, right? Where you're just like, I need a client, and you work with the wrong people, and it's not a fun experience to work with someone who's the wrong fit, and you undervalue, and it can just be really stressful. And I think, marketing, yes, it's strategy and all of that, but I think there's a big energetic component to it, and like the energy that you actually put out there. And there's a lot of magic and alignment that can come from detachment and just detaching from the outcome and not needing everything so much. And I would say that's really hard to do when you are just like, okay, I just like quit my corporate job and now I'm going to build my business, and I got 6 months of money and hope it works out, right? And so maybe you're in a position where you've saved up a lot of money and you can actually have a nice nest egg to, let it run for a couple years or 3 years. And I think that's great. Not everyone is in that situation. And so I think there's nothing wrong with just kind of gradually easing into it. I was able to build to 6 figures, working part-time in my business. So you can do it. You just have to be really intentional with your time. Right. But I think that money piece is really important because, like I said, like, marketing is such an energetic game. And if you're desperate, then people sense that. And maybe they don't know what they're sensing, but they're like, something about this chick, something about this dude, like, it just seems off. Like, something's off, right? Like, no one wants to work with a coach who like desperately needs them and is like, hey, I just like really need you, like, nobody wants that. So I think, like, that's the first step, is just sorting out the money issue, whether it's a part-time job, whether it's reducing your hours at your current job, if that's available to you, and or having enough money saved up to kind of get you through. Because while some people might do it in a year, other people might take 3 years to do it, for sure.
Those are good points. I like that, how you talked about, potentially reducing your hours, basically coming up with your plan and working that plan. And so, whether that's saving money and figuring, maybe in 2 years, I'm going to do this full time. But I think that was a great strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know too, with, being an entrepreneur or planning to be an entrepreneur, it definitely comes with a different mindset, right? And
Mm-hmm.
having a mental shift, because when you are, as they say, a W-2 employee, you know that you're getting paid every 2 weeks or once a month, or however is your pay structure, and you're working for somebody else, and the lines are more black and white. But in the entrepreneur space, there's a lot of gray, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know when the next pay may come. So talk to us a little bit about, not just having your plan, but that mental shift, that energy, as you talked about, how people need to think about that too.
So building a business is the biggest course in personal development that you will ever do in your life. And most people don't know that going into it. I didn't know that going into it. And that's what is really hard about entrepreneurship. The business building, it's strategy, it's data, it's numbers, it's analysis. Like, it's very kind of cut and dry. Like, it's actually the easy part about building a business. What is the hard part about building your business is working through your own shit. Hopefully I can swear. And that's because nobody is building a business inside their comfort zone. And like you just said, like, you don't always know when the next money is coming from, especially in the beginning. Yes, you can get your business to a point where it is consistent and it's reliable. Like, that is definitely available, but it won't happen in the beginning. So there's all this discomfort that comes in running a business. Not only the, well, where am I going to get my money from, but the fact that, like, you don't build a business in a comfort zone. And there is a lot of uncomfortable things you need to do, like putting yourself out on social media, marketing your business, like showing up on live video or live streaming like this, or, having uncomfortable conversations with clients. You have someone who is like, yeah, I want a refund because your program sucked. And you're like, oh God, like, this feels horrible, right? Or someone on social media is just like, says something about your appearance or thinks your advice is stupid or wants to kind of get into it with you. Like, there's a lot of things that happen that are really uncomfortable, and it's triggering, and it triggers all of your shit. And it could be things from childhood, things from a very long time ago that you're like, I thought I dealt with this, and now it's all coming up. And it's very normal. It's not a bad thing, but I think that really throws people off because they're just like, I was really excited to build this business, but now I feel gross and I feel yucky and I'm scared and I don't like the way I'm feeling. And it's really a part of the journey. And it can be hard, but it's also amazing, because if you are open to embracing it and open to receiving the lessons from it, then, I mean, not only can you build this amazing business that you love, that gives you the lifestyle that you want, but it actually pushes you to be a better version of yourself and a better person, and to show up differently in your life and your relationships as well. And it's really, truly amazing, but it's good to know that going into it, because there's a lot of things about building a business that just don't feel good, right? There's rejection. There's, oh God, I've got to do this live video, or, I posting your content. Like, you're really putting yourself out there. So there's this whole different mindset. It's not like, in a regular job where you just kind of put your head down, do the job, and, get a thumbs up at the end of the day. And you're like, great, now I get to go home for the weekend. It's just a totally different mindset. Like, you're the only person who is in charge. You're the boss, and nobody's holding you accountable. And unless set yourself up for success and are aware of these things, like, that's the stuff that holds people back. And that's the only reason I see people really fail in business. It's because they get in their own way.
That was good. And you're right. They don't teach you that anywhere. But yes, there's a level of vulnerability that you don't have working for somebody else that
Mhm.
you do have working for yourself. And so I think that was a great point that you mentioned, that, yeah, you have to put yourself out there. Yes, you're going to experience rejection, you're going to experience failure, all of that comes with it. And so, yeah, that could be for some people the hardest part of it. So I want to get into
Mhm.
that failure a little bit more, but we do have a little bit of feedback from our audience. So I want to make sure that we include them in the discussion. So Carl is tuning in from New Jersey. So welcome, Carl. And he said he was looking forward to our awesome conversation. So if something is of interest to you, make sure that you drop it in the comments, or if you have any questions, drop it in the comments, and we'll make sure that we include that here on the show. And Christy said, as you were talking about the why, and money isn't the sustainer, she was talking about she would like to build generational wealth. So going back to that why,
Mhm.
because as you said, when you hit that 5K month, 8K month, 10K month, it may be temporary if that's not your real why for your
Mhm.
business. So you talked a little bit about, that whole being vulnerable and putting yourself out there. And with that, being an entrepreneur, especially a newer entrepreneur, well, really new or a veteran entrepreneur, or in your career, you're going to have some failure. So I like to make sure that my mentors talk about that, some failures that you had along your journey, and what did you learn from it? Because people might see you, Kendra, today and say, well, she doesn't understand the journey. She's at point Y. She's already had a multi six-figure business, and she doesn't understand, she didn't have that. And so talk to us a little bit about some of the failures that you had and your learning lessons from them.
Yeah, well, I've had a lot of failures. I still continue to fail. Every week there's a failure. But one of the biggest ones that comes to mind was when I tried to launch my first course. And this, I believe, would have been back in maybe 2016. And I started out with one-on-one coaching, which is a really great place to start. It's easy. You don't need a lot of infrastructure. You're just kind of selling, you're consulting, you're coaching, your information. But I always knew that I wanted like a course model or like a group program sort of coaching model. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to start this course. And I spent maybe almost 8 months creating it. It was called Hormone Power. At the time, I was helping women with their hormones and balancing their hormones. And I created this entire course. I had this huge launch. I did a 5-day challenge into a webinar, which is a very like complex like launch model. You have to create a ton of content. And I spent all this money on Facebook ads. I think I spent, at the time, I think maybe I spent $3,000 or $4,000, which was huge for me. Like I wasn't making more than a couple $1,000s a month. So I had this, what I considered a huge budget. I had this Facebook ad that went totally viral. I had hundreds of people show up for my first webinar, like almost crap my pants. I was so scared, but the webinar went so well and I was so excited, and the webinar finished and I was just like ready to get all those notifications from Stripe. And I was like, yes. And I had Post-its that said $15,000 all over my office. I was trying to like manifest it. And it had never occurred to me that I wouldn't make $15,000, but I didn't even make one sale. And I was just like, I was perplexed. Like, I was like, I don't get it. Like I did all the things. Like I did the launch, I did the webinar, like I did all of the things. And as the launch went on, like just nothing was happening. And then I tried relaunching it, I think 3 more times, and I got no sales. And that was really hard for me because I was totally unprepared for that failure, because I really thought that I was just going to crush it. I'd done all the reading, I'd researched all the strategies and all of that. And I just didn't get the success. So it was really a moment of like fetal position on the bathroom floor crying, because I just was like, I can't believe I failed. And it was a really tough thing to go through, but I think it was a really important moment in my business because I learned some really important things. And I think the first thing I learned was the importance of actually listening to your audience. And for anyone who wants to start a business, like your business is not about you, it's about them, right? And the people of whom you help. And you cannot sell something to someone that they don't want, right? Or you cannot solve a problem that people don't think they have. And this is big for anyone who's in health, right? Because we're more aware of like the deeper issues that people have, but they're aware of the superficial issues that they have, right? So they're like, you might be like, well, you need to detox. And you're trying to sell them detoxification. And they're thinking, well, I'm just tired, or I just want to lose weight, right? And so the problem with the program is I was selling them what they needed and not what they wanted. And I wasn't talking to them, and I wasn't asking them not only like, what problem do you want to solve, but like, how do you actually want to work with me? And as it turned out, my audience really wanted more intimacy with me. They didn't just want like a DIY course that they just consumed the information. But I didn't know this because I didn't spend the time actually getting to know them and creating those really deep and important connections and relationships with them, which is just critical in any business, is really understanding the person of whom you serve. So I spent all this time creating this thing that no one actually wanted. And I could have known, but I never asked them, right? And so that's the big lesson that I learned. And what I actually did was speak with them. I spent a bunch of time doing market research. I booked calls with people just to interview them and understand what they wanted. And then 6 months later, I launched another program, which was more of like kind of a higher touch group coaching program that actually did quite well. And that was amazing. I was so happy, but I couldn't have had that success without that big failure. And the other thing that, this might be helpful to people in the audience who are thinking about a business is once you realize that failure is not to be avoided, but it's actually the point, everything gets easier. And that was a big thing that I learned from that. I think we don't like failure because it doesn't feel good. And we create a lot of stories in our head around it. And we're like, oh, it means I suck and I'm a terrible coach and I shouldn't be doing this. And what am I thinking? I'm a fraud. All of those crazy things that go through our head. But really, like, failure is what we are going for. It's the whole point of a business, because you don't get it right the first time out of the gate. No one does, not even the big entrepreneurs that have multiple seven-figure businesses. The first time they create anything new, it's not the best version of it, right? And so failure is the only thing that allows you to learn. And so I do my best to celebrate my failures and almost think of them as just like learning rather than failure.
That was good. It made me think of a lot of different things too. You went through and like you said, you did the reading and you understood the concept, but you did the work somewhat, meaning that the somewhat piece that you didn't talk with your people. And I see it so many times in the workplace where managers, leaders, they come up with all of these great ideas and they're ready to implement, but they don't ask the people, right? And so then they're like, well, I don't understand why the people don't feel recognized. Like, like, we have done all of this, we've given these incentives, but it's not what their employees wanted because they didn't take time to understand their needs. Same thing as in business. If you don't take time to understand your target audience's needs, then it doesn't matter how great your program is, because I'm sure your program was great.
Totally. It was amazing.
And so sometimes we can spend a lot of time a lot of time that causes us in the long run that can be a failure. So I thought that was a very great story, in that whether you're a business owner or whether you are still working and you're in your career, it has the same thing, as you are doing your getting ready and making all these ideas, don't forget about the people that you touch, whether that's your target audience or your employees. So that was a great lesson. So, through your process of being an entrepreneur, do you have your own mentors or coaches or sponsors? Like, what has helped you move the needle? So, people hear a lot about coaching in the professional space. When people think about coaching, they often think of coaching for in a negative way, not necessarily, coaching for development to be better. But what kind of resources do you have on your path, and have they been beneficial? So do you have those mentors, coaches?
Yeah, I mean, I always have a mentor. I think everyone needs a coach in a positive way, right? Someone to help you work through your stuff, to help you see your blocks, to help you, make progress. Because I think, with anything, whether it's a business or a career or like a position, it's really hard to be objective with things that you're very close to. And especially if you're emotionally tied up in it, like you would be with a business or maybe just a career that you really love. And so I think a coach can do a really good job of just like helping you see that stuff. And I've had a coach pretty much since maybe the third year in my business. And I work with all kinds of coaches. I have multiple coaches. I have coaches that help me with business. I have coaches that help me with my mental and emotional stuff. I've had a womb coach, which was super fun. I've had a leadership coach. And yeah, I think it's just so important. Like, I think investing in yourself is the safest investment that you can make.
That's good. So, and Christy also mentioned, as we were talking about programs, she's also talking about products, because that's her business is more product based. So yeah, you have to see what people want.
Yeah.
So your personal and professional development. So you talked about having coaches and probably some mentors on your path. What do you do? What do you do for your own learning? Because sometimes people think that they just, I just wake up and I'm just gonna grow, and not necessarily thinking you have to be intentional. So what are some things that you do for your personal and or professional development?
So one big thing that's been really instrumental in my growth, and this is both like professionally and personally, is breath work. Actually, it's something that I got into in early 2020, and the type of breath work I'm talking about is different than, say, what you do in a yoga class, where you would maybe do like an intentional breath for a few minutes, maybe up to five. What I do is like a deeper meditative breath work where I'm breathing and doing the intentional breath pattern for somewhere, sometimes upwards of an hour, like 45, 50 minutes. And it's really fascinating stuff because the breath can really help move a lot of energy and a lot of like stuck emotions in the body. And for me, in terms of personal development, it's really just about like working through my stuff and allowing myself to feel certain things that maybe I've been avoiding or repressing for many, many years. And I use that in like a meditative sense. And it's pretty cool stuff. Like I might be breathing and I'll just like burst out crying and this emotion will just kind of flood through me. And I'll have visuals. Like you almost get a little bit high, to be honest, when you do breath work, right? There's a type of breath work called holotropic breath work, where it's actually an alternative for LSD. So I'm not doing that, but you can go really deep into some very altered states with breath work. And I've just found it's a really good way for me to face my stuff and become aware of what I need to deal with and figure out like what are those emotions that I'm trying to avoid, because these are the things that come up in my business, right? That mindset stuff is not just for new business owners. And, even for people who are in like the professional world, like you're going to experience the mindset stuff when you maybe enter a new position, right? Like you might still experience imposter syndrome and fear of failure and all the things that an entrepreneur would. And that stuff's all normal. It doesn't go away. You just kind of have to have better tools to deal with it. I still get imposter syndrome. I still feel scared. I still compare myself to others sometimes. That stuff comes up. But the difference between me now and me in my early days is the ability to not only recognize it, but thank it, because it's really just, your inner child trying to protect you, keep you safe. And then being able to sit with it instead of avoiding the emotions. Because I think a lot of people, when they feel stuff, they don't want to feel it. And they repress it or they avoid it or they distract. And what's been really instrumental for me is learning how to actually sit with it and be okay with it. It's like, I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm feeling angry right now. I'm feeling jealousy, whatever it is. And it's okay. And I'm just going to allow it to be in the body, figure out where does it live in my body? Is it in my throat? Is it my solar plexus, my head, my hips, knees, whatever? And then just being with it. And then I breathe into that space. And for me, that's been a really instrumental way for me to actually like start to move some of the stuff out of my body. And ultimately what I experienced is just a feeling of being lighter and a little bit more focused in what I do.
Wow. I think that's interesting. That's why I love this show, and I love having so many different guests on and learn about all these different techniques that works for different people. So I think that's awesome. That's an interesting concept of sitting with your stuff. So, you've heard it mentioned different ways, but I think, sometimes we don't think that stuff comes up in our businesses or in our
Mhm.
careers, some of those things from our past. So I think that's a very interesting concept that you bring up. So thank you for that. What about any books or anything? Are you a book reader?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I go through phases. I like binge it for a while and then I like, focus on reality TV for a little bit. Then I'm like, back to the books, enough reality TV.
What are some of your favorites, or what's one of your go-to like books or podcasts or?
Yeah. So one of my mentors, her name is Ruby Ferman. She's amazing. You should have her on the show. And I worked with her inside a year-long coaching program in 2020. And she has an incredible story. She's an incredibly interesting woman. So I binge her podcast. I believe it's called Potent Truth. And she actually just recently released a book last year, which is also called Potent Truth. And it's really all about kind of finding yourself and taking off the mask and stopping, like, don't pretend to be someone you're not, and just embracing who you are and embracing leadership in a way that doesn't look down on people and isn't you being on a pedestal and talking down to people, but rather, is on the same level and speaking your truth and impacting people in that way. And so that is an amazing book. It's an amazing podcast. Ruby has been a huge part of my personal development and business journey. And then another book that I just binged recently. It's been a while since I've read a book where you just can't put it down and you're like thinking about it all the time. And it's called Levels of Energy by Frederick Dodson. And it's so interesting. It was written in the 90s, and it's all about kind of like the different energetic states and how you can kind of progress up these different levels to kind of like higher vibrational states. And it's very practical in that sense, but it also analyzes the world from a perspective of these energetic states. And it's fascinating because, the past 2 years have been so crazy. It's just like from a psychology perspective, it's been so interesting to see, what's happened and how people react and how people are, kind of acting in the world. And I feel like this book like really just helped me understand the world over the past 2 years from like a psychology and like energetic perspective. And that was just really interesting to me.
Nice. So do you find that you get more of your development from more of a reading or passive content, or more so of in a program actively doing?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely reflection plays a big role in my personal development. I spend a lot of time in nature and in the forest, and I love to just walk in the forest and like hear the sounds of nature and be very reflective in that state. But I also need accountability, and I also need to be pushed for sure. Otherwise, I think I do become a little bit passive and, kind of non-observant of what's going on around me. So I do well with both. And I definitely thrive in a coaching program where somebody's actually calling me out on my shit.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think I like both too.
Mm-hmm.
Both. I like passive content. That's great. I'm a reader, so I love to read or listen to books or listen to podcasts. But I do like that feel of being in a coaching program or mentoring community for that accountability and for that moving from just being a consumer of content to actually putting into action. So a lot of people consume, but when it comes to actually doing or being active, you see that there's a big turn, a big difference.
Yeah, it's
So
like the integration is the biggest part, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked a lot about being in nature and energy. So now I'm curious, and we were talking about books. So if a book was to be written about your journey, your entrepreneur journey, what would it be called, and what would that summary say?
Can I swear?
Well, it depends.
Can I say the F word?
I'd rather you didn't.
Okay. So the book is called What the F.
Okay.
And I would say it's like the trials and tribulations of like creating like success and fulfillment and wealth through like what the actual F moments that I've encountered over starting the business in the depths of a chronic illness, essentially. And the whole time I was just like, WTF, like, how do I do this? Why is this happening to me? Like, I don't get it. And so, yeah, that would be the best. I also tend to swear a lot outside of the show. So I think it would be very, very suiting.
And what would the summary say? I'm picturing that cover. Is that cover just got words on there that says WTF or what the F?
Yeah, and like me with like deer caught in the headlights. Like, I don't like why. I don't get it.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I'm sure it will be an interesting read.
I may never write it, but we'll see.
You never know. And if you do, you said it here first on Leadership Tidbits with Coach T. Wilson. So if you all see that Kendra Perry has wrote a book, know that she said it here first. If she does, you got it here first. So, Kendra, our time is almost coming to a close, but I want to make sure that our viewers can get and stay connected with you. So how can they get and stay connected with you or follow you if they're like, man, I'm really feeling what Kendra is saying. She's real. She uses her curse words, but then she has her energy, and then she is, active, and I just love it. So I want to know more and learn more from her. So how can they do that?
Yeah. So the best place to connect with me is on Instagram. That's typically where I'm hanging out, and I do answer all my DMs. So if anyone has any questions or wants to just say, hey, my handle is at Kendra Perry Inc. I also have a podcast. It's called the Wealthy Coach Podcast. So for anyone who wants to build an online coaching business in the health and wellness, personal development, mindset space, we talk about strategy, we talk about tech, we talk about woo-woo stuff, we get weird, and we have fun. And my website is kendraperry.net.
So you have Kendra's social media. Make sure you go and check her out on her podcast. I'm sure she's going to have some interesting stories for you. And then you can go over to her website. But her social media of choice is Instagram. So if you're over on Instagram, make sure you get connected with her. So as we get ready to wrap up, I always ask my guests to give the viewers one or two tidbits that they can leave the viewers with that they can implement right away. So we are about action here and not just being passive listeners or passive consumers of information and content. We want you to be able to put some of this and to practice to be able to move forward in your business and or your career. So Kendra, what would you leave the listeners or viewers with?
I think one of the best pieces of advice I've been given is simplicity scales. And I say that to myself all the time because I think we always try to overcomplicate things, right? We try to make things difficult. Like if in business, we're like, I need like 10 offers and I need all these funnels. And, and I'm sure the same thing could be said about someone who has a product-based business who's in the professional world. We like to overcomplicate things, but usually the best solution is the simple solution. And the more simple you can make something, the easier it is. And then the more time you can have for yourself to do the fun things in life.
That was good. So simplicity scales. Keep it simple. Mm-hmm. I know you all have heard that before. Keep it simple, right? Yeah. Because sometimes the more complicated it becomes, the more you plan out, you spend 8 months planning out and spend all this money in ads and have this awesome program that nobody wants. Keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was awesome. I'm really grateful for you, Kendra, and that you shared that story because I had definitely been in that space of planning something out for a long period of time, and it was totally awesome to me. And I put it out there, and I didn't have any takers, so that resonated with me. So thank you for sharing that.
It's rough. It's rough when that happens. It's rough, but I think everyone goes through it in in entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Miss Diane said, thank you so much for sharing the tidbits. She definitely appreciates it. She says, I'm learning that now. Keeping it simple. Keeping it simple. As we talked about earlier, she's in a product-based business. So, as you just mentioned too, that you have to think about, how many products do you offer, 10, 15, 20, 30 products. And it's still, true to the essence of your core, your business. Same thing with services that you offer. I was there trying to offer a million services and really keep it simple. Offer your top 2, 3, 1. Depends on where you are. Right.
One is the most simple.
Right. One is enough.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, if you are still on and you got a question and we have another minute or two, we can take that. You could drop it in the chat if you have another question or so. But Kendra, this was awesome. I am excited and happy that you were able to join us all the way from Canada. I'm here in Ohio, Cincinnati.
Oh,
So,
nice. Oh,
so
I've
that's,
never been.
well, you are welcome.
Oh, well, thank you.
to
Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming and sharing with the audience. I really appreciate you sharing your nuggets. And I always get something from each and every mentor that I have. That's why this show is important, because we bring mentors from all over with different viewpoints, different strategies, and it makes me think about different things in which I maybe wasn't thinking about before. So this has been awesome. So thank you, viewers, for tuning in to this week's episode of Leadership Tidbits with Coach T. Wilson. Come back next week, same time, same channel, same place. I'll have another amazing mentor for you next week. Please share this broadcast out if you have not shared it already. When you come back next week, invite a friend. Keep it simple, but it's better with friends to keep you accountable too. So until next time, I hope you have a super amazing week, and I'll see you later.